Have you ever been to an event and wondered, how the heck did this event come to fruition and how did it get so big? Some people just have an ability and a deep desire to build community, and my guest today is definitely one of those people. She's truly an amazing leader, so much so that she's been able to build the sport of triathlon in the city of Edmonton and really cities all around the world to a level that really we haven't seen in recent number of years, and to a level where Edmonton hosted the World Championships. I mean, this was almost unheard of 20 years ago. She's the president of World Triathlon Series in Edmonton, and our city will be hosting the Grande Final this year. So how does one do that? Get married, have children, welcome grandchildren, build a world-class event, and survive cancer as well? We're going to find it all out today as I welcome this incredible community builder, Sheila O'Kelly, to the inner circle today. Wow, you're here. And it's like snowing, and it's everything that triathlon isn't today in our city.
Exactly. Thank you, Carrie. And that's all very flattering. But you did start out saying, have you ever wondered how this happened? And it made me think immediately back to 2001, because absolutely I wondered how it happened. You know, we put on the event. It's a massive amount of work. We went above and beyond, and poof, it's over. So I remember myself and one of the staff, all we could do was cry. We thought, oh, we'd actually never seen anything like that. So yeah. That was that moment.
I mean, there's got to be a lot of those moments in your journey, and we are going to dig into that. But I want to give our listeners a perspective of who you are, where you came from, and I'm going to say this, that beautiful accent, there's just a slight hint of it. Now, you'd probably say I have an accent, or you've lived in Edmonton long enough, but that accent comes from where, Sheila?
That accent comes from Ireland.
Yes. Born and raised?
Born and raised in Ireland. And my first year in Ottawa, I was on the telephone to a garage, and the guy called out and says, "Can someone talk to this woman? I don't know a word she's saying."
Well, you have some interesting expressions, don't you? Can you give us some examples of things you say that it's like, what? What is that? We were talking about some.
Yeah.
Any come to mind, or has it been too many years?
It's probably come to, they just come to me, and I think, where did that come from? But right now, if I'm looking for one, it's just not there. But it might come out during the course of the interview.
I'll wait for it. Okay, so you said you were born and raised in Ireland. When did you come to Canada, and why?
We came to Canada in 1977 to Ottawa. My husband had done psychiatry. He had done his British fellowship.
Okay.
He had in 4 years, and you couldn't get a consultant's job until you were 7 years post-med school. So the theory was that if you went away, you got a better job when you came back.
Okay.
So we went away.
Yes.
For 3 years with a 20-month-old and a 5-month-old, and landed in Ottawa.
Oh my goodness. Had you ever been to Canada before?
No. I'd been to the States when I was 16.
And then you arrive in Ottawa?
I arrived in Ottawa with 2 babies and
your first thoughts were what?
2 suitcases and a guitar. There was no, when I see my grandkids coming now, and it's like they're moving house when they just come for dinner.
Isn't it the truth? I always say that traveling with kids, you pack your whole darn house. Okay, but wait, who played the guitar?
Oh, my husband did.
Okay.
He took himself partway through university with that.
Did he really? When he was playing gigs in nightclubs or something?
No, in pubs, and he played in the Poconos in the summer in the States with his sister and a couple of classmates.
Wow. Okay, so
I didn't know if he got invited to the party or the guitar got invited.
Well, either way, it's a compliment, right? So you arrived, 2 suitcases, 2 kids, and the guitar in Ottawa, and your first thought, Sheila, is?
What the heck? I tried for 3 months. And we lived in a townhouse, and all I could think of was Pete Seeger's song, little boxes, and they all looked just the same. Because I'd never lived. I grew up in the country, and we'd actually bought a house in Ireland before we came here. So going into the little box neighborhood, and then, you have to give up that. After 3 months, crying wasn't getting me anywhere, so had to get on with it. And then in a year, John took a job in Edmonton.
Had you ever heard of it?
No, he had looked at 2 places, Halifax and Edmonton, and we arrived in Edmonton.
And
the only thing I knew about Edmonton, Alberta, was that there were 4 strong winds blowing out there.
Do you know that song?
Yes.
It's a great song, right? Okay. So you come to Edmonton and thinking you're going to do what?
We're going to stay then for 2 years and then go back. What
That
we were
was the
planning
plan.
To do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we came to Edmonton. We bought a house. I started getting to know people, and 5 years later, we were still here, and we were always getting letters saying, well, there's a job here, there's a job there, and finally, it's minus 40 a day like today. Well, it's not minus 40 out there today, but
We've had enough of those.
what the heck?
It's okay.
Why don't we
yeah.
give it a go? So
Okay.
we went back to Ireland in '83. We now had a third child,
Okay.
so we went back to Ireland in '83
For work?
For work.
Yes.
For my husband's work, I was stay-at-home mom at that stage, because between exams and everything else that he was doing, that I had to hold the fort. And we went back in '83 to Cork, and we bought a house, moved lock, stock and barrel, changed schools, put kids into school. They had to learn Gaelic. We did Gaelic with them for 3 months before they went back. They had left French immersion. 2 years later, we coming back. We did French for 3 months, and they went back into French.
So
And
you
we
went
came
back?
We were '83 and came back in '85.
What? How come it only
Bought
lasted
a house,
2?
sold a house.
Okay, wait. But why? That's like
It
you're
was
not
actually
moving
my
cities.
husband. In the end, by the time we went back, it was my husband that really wanted to go back, and he would chastise me for being negative about it. And then we went back, and he was the negative one.
What didn't he like about being back
Uh,
home?
Well, he went back into. He was in a general hospital here. He went back into a psychiatric hospital there. He felt they were moving slowly. They didn't start till 10, and it was okay. We'll go back.
Did you miss Canada when you were over in Ireland?
No, I didn't have time to miss because I was busy settling in.
Okay.
It's like going somewhere for 2 days overseas and you don't have time for jet lag. You just have to get on with it.
So did you even give it any thought? Because you know that moving and change is like number one stressor in life. And the
Never
second
gave
is public speaking, by the way. Never again?
No, never. We never gave the stressor a bit of thought.
Because you're too
we
busy?
We were just going to do it, and that was it. And we were busy. We had 3 kids,
Okay.
and we came back in a 4th one 8 weeks later.
Oh my goodness.
So
Okay.
it was just, you just did things.
So you come back to Edmonton 2 years later with 4 boys.
No, I had the eldest is a boy, and the 3rd girl was born in August.
Okay.
We came back in June. She was born in August.
So at what point did triathlon come onto the scene of your life?
Well, my husband was a runner, and we would go to road races, and I would go, and I used to carry the bag. And then one day I decided I wasn't going to be the bag lady anymore, that I'd try this running thing myself.
So why weren't you running up to that point, though?
Because I didn't grow up with sports.
Okay. So no sports.
No, I grew up in the west of Ireland, in the country. It wasn't, we walk and ran to school and cycled to school and
All right.
stuff like that. But there wasn't like school. It was in the country. There wasn't, and there especially wasn't organised sports for girls. Where my husband had played rugby and then had started doing running.
Okay.
And
And
then he went from that to triathlon. I started running. I had to learn to swim, so I did my first triathlon out here in Sherwood Park in Millennium Place.
did you
In
really?
the Sherwood Park Kids of Steel in the late 80s.
Okay, but you can't go that far that fast. Just hold on. I know you're used to moving fast from country to country to country, but I need to know what it was like the first time you said you started to run. And then how do you go just from running to doing triathlons? I've been running for years and I don't do triathlons because I would sink in the water. How did that all happen?
Well, I decided that I had to learn to swim. So I went to classes. I wasn't doing very well there. There was a woman in St. Albert who taught in her backyard. I went to her, and I was in classes with her with 5-year-olds.
Taught in her backyard? She had a swimming pool?
She taught, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, eventually I learned to go from one end of the pool to the other
All right.
without drowning.
So then, but you're in an open water swim when you're doing triathlon.
I have only been in open water swim once. So
Okay.
the few triathlons I did, and I only did a couple of short ones ever.
Check. Okay. So then what
Or
about the
in a
bike
pool.
portion?
The bike was fine.
Oh, okay. Well, you
I
could
grew up
probably
on a
grew
bike.
up on a bike. Yes, exactly.
was-
Okay. So you're ready to go and you decide, I'm going to do this. What was it like?
Yes. I went, and then so my husband went from running to triathlon.
Mm-hmm.
And then we discovered in the late 80s, after we came back from Ireland, probably about 87, there was a Kids of Steel event going on out here in Sherwood Park. And we came the first year, and then the second year. By the second year, I had learned to swim. It was on Father's Day, so the fathers got to do it, and then they started letting the mothers do it.
Okay.
You could do it as a team.
Yeah.
So my first triathlon was a team with my 5-year-old here in the little place.
Oh, with your 5-year-old.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Well, she was more confident than I was.
They usually
and
are.
we finished, so.
Wow, what a gift to teach a 5-year-old how to persevere. This is not easy stuff.
Oh, well, my kids were in swimming, and she just, she was the youngest, and she just decided she could do everything, so.
And did she think it was fun?
Oh, yeah.
And did you think it was as much
And her
fun
brother
as
went with her on the bike, and he took her the wrong way, and she got so annoyed. She's coming to the finish line. She throws the bike to one side and runs.
Whoa, she was spicy at 5.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So was that the same one that was it her, her brother and you? Is that how it worked?
No, all my kids did it. But my son, who would have been, I don't know, 13 maybe at the time, 14, had finished his race, so he just ran alongside her on her bike with the training wheels. But he took a wrong turn, so they went a little bit further than they should have gone.
Okay. And she didn't like the extra exercise. So how did that grow and develop amongst your children? Were they all involved in triathlon?
No, they really just did it for fun. They were primarily swimmers and, well, at one point skiers. And then when we came out here to Sherwood Park to this kids' race, we had 2 neighbours in St. Albert, friends, whose kids were also skiing, and this was the summer activity. So you didn't train for this or anything. So then the guy out here in Sherwood Park decided to stop doing it. So myself and one of the dads, Michael Chalkley, said, well, we'll just do it in St. Albert. So I think we put on our first Kids of Steel in St. Albert in 92.
Okay, and so why did you step up to the plate? It's a lot. It's the same as look, if you're involved, your children are involved in sports, they're always looking for team managers or the parents that are going to take the kids for bottle drives, right? It's a big time commitment. You just hopped in with both feet, no surprise there, and said, well, I'm going to organize a triathlon. Why?
I think the sport intrigued me. I think it also intrigued me because it wasn't set in stone the way swimming and athletics is and that I had experienced. Like my kids were in swimmers. I worked like 1 year, 52 bingos. But I never really got that involved. I did what I had to do. I billeted kids and I did timing at the pool and worked bingos. But triathlon had some kind of a lure of a fun thing. And I just thought, let's do this. And it was I think it's that fun aspect, and that's really where triathlon came from. I mean, it was guys sitting around in San Diego in the late 70s that said, well, what can we do? How can we do this different? We're tired just running and tired just biking. So they put the 3 together. The first triathlon, actually, the swim was the last event.
Okay.
But they quickly realized that it's not such a good idea, running and biking and then going in the water.
Right.
In terms of safety. So, I mean, that's
body's
kind of,
pretty
but
tired by that point.
It was that sort of, if you like, boredom with the traditional sports. I can't say that it was boredom with the traditional sport. It's just that there was a lure or something that
Because
was fun
it was
about
fun.
it. It was the community. It was the friends. Everybody did it together. I mean, my kids were serious about swimming. But this was a fun thing to do.
And is that what you saw in
the
them when you
community.
would put them in to triathlon? Did they always say that? Because for some parents, it's hard to motivate their kids to do something like that because they can look at it from the outside and go, that's way too hard, and start the next sentence with, I can't.
No, I think we were all in it together, and it was the fun thing. This is what we did, and
Okay.
there were used to activity in the household, so I don't know. I can't really answer that. We just did it.
You did it like other things you did in life. Okay, that was the first step with
Yeah.
triathlon, organizing that kids event in St. Albert.
Yeah.
Tell us how things took off from there.
So this kids event was quite successful. My friend who was doing it with me, he was great, and everything. He was really quite a perfectionist in terms of making sure everything worked smoothly. So then roll on to I think about 1995, early 95, my daughter was working for the Alberta Triathlon Association as a summer job. She was probably 17, 18 at that stage,
Okay.
my eldest daughter. And she goes, Mom, why don't you bid for junior nationals? I think, like, what's that? How do I do that? So that year in Fort McMurray, the senior nationals were in Fort McMurray. So because of her job, she was involved with the senior nationals. So she said, it's not that hard. And, you know, one thing led to another, and put in a bid for junior nationals in St. Albert for 96. I had to fly to Fort McMurray. Again, I wasn't aware of the importance or what exactly the National Federation did, as in Triathlon Canada or as in ITU. So I flew to Fort McMurray. I had 40 pages of a bid, one copy. I mean, first of all, they weren't ever used to getting written stuff, and then they get 40 pages of one copy. And I had competition. There was a guy from Pugwash in Nova Scotia bidding for the 96 national championships.
Did he have a big, like, lots of pages?
He had a video, and he had pewter keychains. And I thought, whoa, I never knew about Prezzies.
What did you call them? Like it's like the swag bag thing, right? Okay.
So, and then there's coffee break, and I present my 40 pages, and he does his video and shows the beautiful scenery and everything else from Pugwash, Nova Scotia. And there's a coffee break, and there's a guy from Ontario who starts chatting to me, and he said, you know, would you be okay if we gave it to Pugwash in 96 and St. Albert in 97? And without thinking, I go, oh, I thought you guys voted.
Oh.
And it came to St. Albert.
So you won?
Yes.
Because you called him out?
Well, I said I came for this. Like,
I'm
not doing a deal over coffee.
There's no side deals here. Go and vote and come back.
Yeah.
Wow, and so you got it.
So we got it, yes.
I need to ask this question. Is this all volunteer right now?
That was all volunteer.
Were you at that point still staying at home with the kids?
Yes, I always say I had my own sponsor.
Okay.
Yes. So that was all volunteer. Junior Nationals in St. Albert was volunteer. We blew it out of the water again because we always went above and beyond. And then somebody said, why don't you bid for Worlds? And I go, what's that?
It seems like all good
How do we
ideas
do
for you
that?
start with what's that and how do you do that? Okay.
And where would we do it? Horlick Park. Horlick Park?
Which at the time, for people who don't understand Horlick Park and what that means in the big context, if you're listening from outside of Edmonton, give us perspective on why that's such an issue.
Horlick Park is this wonderful city park that was built, I think, in 1967, and they have an artificial pond.
Yeah.
It is not a swimmable pond.
Because
it's not deep enough, and it was never, the quality of the water probably wasn't there. It was stocked with fish, and people fed, you know, the ducks there, and it was never thought of. So we went to the city, and again, the person who had worked with me in St. Albert was David Rudge, and he worked for the city in the recreation department, City of Edmonton. And yeah, one thing led to another. We put in a bid in 1998 in Lausanne for the 2001 World Championships in Edmonton, and we won the bid. And then we had a major cleanup of the lake, and we made it, you know, swimmable for the period of time of the triathlon.
Wait, pause. When you say you made it swimmable, this just didn't happen overnight. This was a long, long journey to do that.
No, it didn't happen overnight. The lake had to be drained, and the base had to be scraped, and then refilled with potable water. And in fact, the first year when we did the first test event was in 1999, and it was a national championship combined with a Continental Cup, and we had some problems with swimmer's itch. It's quite common in lakes in lakes in Alberta.
Yeah.
And so that set the stage for treating the lake each year, which we've done ever since. It gets treated with chlorine for the event.
Yeah. But Sheila, like, to take on a bid for the World Championships, this was not a paid position for you. You were still volunteering?
I'm still volunteering, yes.
What is the why behind that?
there was a lot of excitement to it, and I guess I was always looking towards, well, I'm getting to the point where I want to do something myself. I always wanted to do something myself. This allowed me to do something myself, I think, and I wasn't putting a lot of thought into it at the time, but it allowed me to do something myself that, built into something else. And again, it wasn't the plan. Then when we won the bid, that's when the committee came back to me and said, well, we have to hire somebody now, and obviously
You're first in line.
I'm first in line. So then I got hired in 1999 and said, oh my goodness, now I have to work twice as hard. Actually going to pay me to do this.
Why was the word no never in your vocabulary?
That's a brilliant question. I still don't have it.
Because?
In fact, recently somebody in our office bought this little machine, and when you hit it, it goes no, 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 no.
Was that like a veiled kind of hint or something for you, or?
Yeah, and I think I've created people around me who have issues with the word no as well.
You clearly did. You never used it.
No. I never used it. No was not my first word, and I don't understand people whose first word is no.
Tell me more about that.
Because, opportunity comes along, and you do come across people who and they, no, you can't do that. Or the first reaction is, how can you do it? You can't, that won't work. Well, you don't know that it won't work. Or, we take on the World Cup, and then Triathlon Canada comes to us and says, will you do junior nationals as well? Will you do a mixed relay? Will you do a para? And I go, yeah, let's see. And that, it just is something that we do. And it enhances everything you do. If you're just doing that one event and then somebody said, well, para's, coming on, will you do para? You can't say you won't do para, because it's amazing. Para triathlon is now in the Olympic Games. We did put on the first para national championships in 2011 or 12.
Okay.
And the first para World Cup as well.
As a massive success as well.
Yes, and it is a lot of work. I mean, that was one where people were coming back to me, oh my goodness, because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of additional work.
Yes. Before we go there, I need to close the loop on this issue. Is like you said, it never occurred to you to begin by saying no. You always think of the possibilities. Where does that come from? Why do you respond that way? Because the tendency can be to respond with no, because with a lot of people will say that because they're afraid of failure. They're afraid that, if I just say no, if I don't do this, then I won't fail. But if I take it on, there's a high risk of failure. So give us your perspective on that.
Well, I guess I've never thought of it that way. And maybe I never, some of those things maybe go back to your upbringing. Again, I grew up in the country. I was the youngest. I probably didn't have no said to me very much. There weren't a lot of rules. And maybe that's where it comes from. Just that, I was the youngest of 8, so maybe I did get away with things, and I didn't have to ask permission, and I wasn't getting no, so then I didn't know how to say no. You just made me think. I made that up right now.
Yeah. Your reaction is priceless to that. But is what I'm wondering too is at the heart of it is that community builder. You've always wanted to give this gift back to the community. Is that part of the desire to take on these massive asks?
Yes, I think it is the community, and it is part of belonging. I mean, when you are an immigrant too, you have to go out of your way to make friends, and you have to build your surrogate families, because you don't have your real families there. And I think that's the key to being successful as an immigrant and in a community, is getting involved in the community. And, just having that camaraderie and the people with you are like-minded and want to do the same things. I mean, this is what makes your life richer. I mean, we did those things. We never did any of them without having parties and fun.
Well, that's an important part of the journey.
It's
right?
an absolutely essential part of the journey.
So going back to the World Championships in Edmonton, I remember I was a journalist. I was reading the 6 o'clock news when this all came to fruition, and I remember when it was first announced and thinking, you want to swim where? And how are they going to pull it off? How did you make that event such a success? What are the keys to building an event like that to take it from what may have been perceived as a crazy idea into a massive success?
The City of Edmonton were, from the outset, a wonderful supporter. So we had that confidence. But also, if you remember back to 2001 and 1998, we won the bid in, I want to say, August 1998. A couple of months later, the World Athletics bid was given to Edmonton. So Edmonton now had the 2001 World Athletics, and they were big. Like, we had a budget of 3 million, they had a budget of 110 million. So we were the mouse and they were the elephant. And for us to get noticed in Edmonton and to have a presence from the outset, we had to work really, really hard. We had to showcase triathlon when we put banners up or any, because people mixed us up. They thought we were athletic. So we always had to be distinguishing ourselves.
Okay.
And we also learned a lot from athletics. You know, we saw different things that they were doing. And IAAF is a much more established federation. This has been around forever than ITU. So, you know, a lot of their, you know, their look and feel and the glamour around the city and everything, we tried to match that in a much smaller scale. So I think that, and the other thing about triathlon is when triathletes come to the city, they're very visible. You know, you're not in a stadium and you're not just going in a bus from your hotel to the stadium. You got your bike downtown. You're riding your bike downtown. You're in your country uniforms. You got this color and you got this, you're visible. So I think that really created excitement. And I mean, our friends at athletics afterwards said, you know, triathlon did set the stage. We were 2 or 3 weeks ahead of athletics world championships.
Wow. So, but in the grander scheme of things, for people listening, trying to engage like you engaged and wanting to put on world-class events like this, what's the key in making them a success in terms of event planning?
I think you've got to be quite strategic and you've got to have your supporters. And if you're, you know, if you want to bring an international event to the city, I mean, the key is the city. And I mean, Edmonton has been, it didn't have Edmonton events back in 2001. It created Edmonton events after that. And just having a city that's proactive like that and sees tourism and sees sport tourism as a driver for the city, because sport tourism is really the only kind of tourism in Edmonton, or mostly there's some other concert and fringe tourism and that as well. I think that's key. And then the other key element is having drivers in the community to be part of your team. This is not something that I ever did by myself. I always had people who were better known, were smarter, were, you know, could support this sort of thing. And those are the two key things. And then the third thing for Edmonton is volunteers. I mean, it's an amazing volunteer community.
We
had 900 volunteers back in 2001. I mean, that's phenomenal too, that you can put on an event and you can get those volunteers.
Yeah.
And some of those people that were part of our crew in St. Albert in '96 are still on our committees, leading
that's
committees.
Extraordinary.
So there's a lot of ownership, and again, it becomes like a family, and that's why I say you can't do those things without having fun and without having engagement. It's not everybody knows everybody, and we always make sure that people get looked after, and you have to. You can't do those things without volunteers.
That's important, and I'm glad that you're shining the light on that, and I want to draw a little more attention to that, because for people who wonder about the why behind volunteering, I think you really shone a light beautifully on it when you said it's that family element, and it enriches your life in so many ways. And I'm sure if you talk to the 900 plus volunteers you had on board, they would tell you the same thing.
Yes.
They wouldn't be around for 20 years doing it if they didn't get something from it, as you did.
If they didn't feel part of the family. And I think they do feel part of the family, because all of those volunteers, they're like your ambassadors. They're out there, they're talking, they're bringing their friends to the family. Some of our volunteers turned into triathletes. You know, some of them have kids who become triathletes.
Yes.
But it's engagement. Community engagement is critical. And however you identify your communities for your sport or what you're doing, they have to be part of your journey.
You talked about the Paralympics, staging that event. What kind of challenges did that bring forward?
Well, it's just the logistics of it. You know, you've got the various categories, and you have to plan for it. You have to plan for the handlers, because you know they have to have the handlers. You got to train the handlers. We've had to run classification, because again, triathlon, para-triathlon came along pretty quickly, and para was always part of, they used to call it AWOD, athletes with a disability. And we always had that category in the World Championship, but it was, you know, anyone who decided that they wanted to do triathlon just did it. But it becomes an Olympic sport. Now you've got to raise the bar. There's got to be a standard, and there's got to be classification. And we had like 11 or 12 categories. They had to come down to 5 or 6. And just managing and understanding that, and understanding how to manage it. It was a lot of work, but it's extremely satisfying. Like, people just love it, and just love the inspiration that it shows. I mean, when you see somebody going up Emily Murphy Hill in their wheelchair, it's, you know, you just stand there and think.
That moves you to the core.
Yes, so it's very, and Canada is very successful in it, and it's been very successful for ITU. 2016 was the first Olympics.
So was that at the beginning of our conversation, you said, was it that moment where you stood back after the success of both those events and went, how the heck did I do that? Do you remember that moment?
I remember the moment in 2001.
Yeah.
And
tell me about it.
And it was just, you know, you work, and it was 24/7. And then everything looks perfect, everything is perfect. We got huge accolades, and was, you know, declared the best ever by the International Federation president and everything else. And then, boom, it's over. And it was, wow, we really did pull that off, and it did look great. And I think that stands out, because everything after that, it was, we'd set a bit of a bar, so now it was just setting a higher bar, which we continue to do. And many of the things that we did even in 2001 and again in 2014 are very much part of the event organizer's manual for ITU.
Wow, so like you created programs and legacies.
Yes.
How does that feel?
That's one of the really greater things, because again, you alluded to earlier, if my kids were doing triathlon.
Yes.
Well, they weren't, but if there was a triathlon club, they might have. Because you know that kids win any sport, part of it is the camaraderie in the club. But there wasn't such a club. So my kids are swimmers because there was the camaraderie there. I mean, and not every kid that goes into sport is going to the Olympics. There are all other reasons to be there and other reasons to stay there. So it was always in the back of my head, we need something like this. So we took a short break in 2008, 2010, and we decided that whatever little bit of money we had left over, we would form the Edmonton Triathlon Academy. So we did. The first thing we did was hire a coach, and then we had to go find the athletes.
That's huge.
And it was huge. It is still huge. That is still there, and just to have that, and that was geared towards youth and juniors, and really geared towards ultimately, you know, high performance and a club where people can really participate. That club has evolved now. They have age group. They're starting with age groupers. They're starting with other programs. So it's continuously evolving. And the cool thing that I always think, the logo of that club is the logo of our 2001 World Championship.
Oh, wow.
So I hope they don't get any genius who comes along and thinks it needs updating.
Oh, what a beautiful legacy. And I hear you about the club aspect and just opening the door for children, because my kids for the past, I'm going to say 5-6 years, I mean, Allegra was 5 when she did her first little triathlon. God, she had fun, because she could swim and she could run like the wind, and she'd get on that little bike and her legs would go so fast. And it was really fun. As she started to understand what she was doing as she got older, then she realized how hard it was and how challenging. But she's done almost 5. My son has done 5, and he feels so accomplished at the end.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And we did, when we brought back the World Cup in 2011, we started our Kids of Steel at the Royal Granora. And that's been going ever since. This year it's at the Kinsman because the Royal Glenora is under construction. But I had one year, I think I had 6 grandkids in it. And, you know, it's just so funny. There was a little 5-year-old last year that says, "Oh, I really suffered on that swim." And it's like, his dad runs, so he probably comes back and says he suffered on the run. You know,
Oh, that's precious.
they just have so much fun.
Yes.
And
I can relate. But so we've been focused on triathlon and everything you've been doing, but there was a whole story behind the scenes too here, is that like your own personal life and what was going on with you're raising kids at the same time. And then there was a cancer diagnosis, actually 2 cancer diagnoses. Take us there, Sheila. What happened?
Well, we really had a great life. I mean, it's, with our kids, we didn't have a problem. They're good kids and grandkids and everything else. And then in 2013, we were in London at the Grande Final because my husband did do the World Championships every year.
He participated in them.
Yes, from 1996. The only World Championship he ever missed was Beijing in 2011.
Oh my gosh. Did he ever place?
No, not international.
So for him it was what,
It was participation. Yeah. He loved it. He was part of the Canadian team and all of that. So we were in London, our group here, because in 2013, because we were hosting 2014. So we had a booth and everything else, and John was there doing the triathlon, and so I gathered some of my team and said, "Oh, we got to go cheer him on. I can't be the bad wife."
Sheila.
So we go out and we can't find him. And then finally I asked one of the technical, he said, "Oh no, he didn't leave transition." So then he had said he had a flat in transition. And then after that he was really tired and just didn't seem, and he, in London, he seemed really off, and I thought, well, maybe you should do core strength.
That's what you said?
So we come back in September because we had gone to Ireland for a holiday, and he went to the gym and for the early morning strength training.
The strength training. He took your advice.
The 28th of October we went for dinner, and that's when he said, "I definitely have something. It's either cancer of the pancreas or cancer of the bowel."
Wow. How did you process that?
Wow. Like, well, you got to go, to a GP right away. And he goes, "Well, yeah, I'll go next week." And I go, "No, you have to go tomorrow." Tomorrow was Thursday. Friday he had the scan, and that was it. He never went to work again. And he took the toughest chemo that was available.
What was he diagnosed with?
Pancreatic cancer.
Pancreatic.
Yeah, it's called the silent killer.
Yes.
And it often can be misplaced for depression because people do get so tired and so lethargic and so. But it's like he'd had a medical that summer and nothing. The only thing he didn't have was an abdomen scan, and that might have seen something. But
so healthy.
Yes, so healthy. Yeah.
Healthy
training,
triathlons.
everything. But that is pancreatic cancer. It's absolutely, and it's
Was it in the genes?
What his comment at the time was, it's the same as it was when I was a medical student. The research isn't going into it because the research is going into breast cancer and the more sexy cancers, if you like. In the last few years, I think there is more of a focus because it is on the increase, dramatically on the increase. And again,
And do they know why?
No, I don't know that they know why.
Was there a history of cancer in his family?
No,
Oh
nothing.
gosh.
No.
Was that how did that make you feel?
It was absolutely devastating for everyone. I mean, it was just, this was, the World Championship was coming. John gets a terminal diagnosis. He went through the chemo. We spent lots of time going back and forth to the hospital because he got quite sick from it at times. And, he died on June 13th.
So sorry. I can see you like he was your best friend. You guys did everything together, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's hard. It brings back probably a lot of pain when you think about it.
Well, you can't, it's like everything else in life. It is. And you can't change it. And you have to get on. You can't get over.
No. How did you get on?
Well, the World Championship was there, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Should I quit? What should I do? And I actually said to my son, maybe I should quit. And he goes, no, Mom, don't, you'll go mad. And that was very true. But that, you know, it also, because then there's the guilt. Should I?
Right.
Like what? And
Because grief takes you on an unexpected journey.
So we had all family coming from left, right, and center, which was always great. The kids were great. We hired somebody because he hated the hospitals. So he did not, only when in emergencies, he died at home.
Was that difficult?
Well, it was what he wanted. Of course it was difficult. Like there's, you know, but there's no, like...
You honored his wishes?
Yes.
So did you do the World Championship?
Yeah, we did.
Was that part of your healing?
We did, yes. Yeah, we did the World Championship, and some of the family came from Ireland for it. His sister and husband are big age group triathletes in Ireland. They came here. His brother-in-law did it on his bike.
Wow. Was it in his honor?
Yes.
How'd that make you feel? Because
it was really good. I mean, he should have been there. So
was it healing though at all? That's why I moved on to the World Championships, because I know that's what he probably wanted for you.
Oh, he wanted the World Champion. He actually wanted to live. That was his goal. Was to live for it. But he didn't make it. But yeah, the World Championship went on, and it was a huge success.
Well, you did it for him in just a different way, Sheila, didn't you?
Yeah. And it created great legacies too, you know, for the...
Tell me about it, the legacies.
The legacies, we have provided scholarships to athletes for high performance, both at Triathlon Canada. We provided funding to the Alberta Triathlon Association.
Oh, wow.
We provided funding for the continuation of the Edmonton Academy. And we hosted, from it as well, we hosted the 2017 Science and Triathlon Conference, which was the first time it was hosted outside of Europe. And that was really successful. We partnered with the U of A and Dr. Michael Kennedy, and the legacy from that, we now have a PhD student will be the first doctor of triathlon.
Oh,
as a result of that conference.
Wow. So look at that.
And 2020, the bid for 2020 was based on the 2014 and the city wanting it back. So it is a continuous thing. This time we have decided that we will build legacies rather than leave. We still want to leave, but we also want to build. Because going back to your earlier question, how do you get people excited about triathlon in Edmonton? How do you tell people about it?
Yeah.
So a year ago November, we started a schools program and elementary schools.
Yeah.
So we have a coach who goes into the elementary school. He teaches the kids from Monday to Friday. On Friday they do a gymnasium triathlon. Almost 10,000 kids have been through that program to date.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they get a little certificate saying, I am a triathlete.
Oh.
So that is building, and hopefully that, you know, paves the way for the next stage. Ultimately, what I would like to see is triathlon being a core sport on the university program.
Wouldn't that be
the
great?
other three sports are there, so it would seem logical for us to be able to work with university sports and get triathlon as a core sport.
Yeah, 100%. Are you
Mike,
close?
No, it's something that has to happen, and it's something we have to partner with the National Federation, and it's not an easy process, but it will happen one day.
I love the way you worded that. It's not like, well, I don't know how to do that. And even it's like, yeah, this is what has to happen and we're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, I know how it works. Three of my kids swam right through university. And, you know, when they went to university, I never worked another bingo.
How many bingos in the course of your life, Sheila?
Oh, there was a certain stage I started paying people to work.
And why not? I mean, I know you put in your time.
Yes.
After the passing of your husband, then you had your own scare. 2017.
That's just a couple of years ago, yeah. I just had a little pimple on my nose that turned into pretty serious basal cell carcinoma that basically ended up having my nose reconstructed.
Okay, wait. What it looked like a white head or something?
Yeah, and I would pick at it and it would, you know, get a bit crusty, and then the crust would fall off, and then I went and had a scan, and it was precancerous, need to keep an eye on it, and then I think it was August 2017 the crusty thing started happening again, I went to my GP and he cryoed it off before I went to the World Championship in Rotterdam. And I came back and saw the dermatologist. He goes, yeah, it's basal cell, we'll book you. But he said it's slow growing.
Okay.
So I had an appointment for March. I went in March, had a Mohs treatment, which is what they do, is scrape.
Yes.
And they do a scrape and put it under microscope until all the margins are clear.
Mm-hmm.
I had 5 scrapes, which resulted in pretty much a good chunk of my nose being gone. And 2 days later, I had plastic surgery.
Oh my gosh. That's so much in a short period of time.
And 38 stitches, and it looked horrific because this piece of skin was down here. I looked like an elephant.
But when you were such a beautiful woman and you walked in for this conversation, I never would have known in a million years.
Well, that's thanks to the amazing plastic surgeon.
So they took the skin for your nose from your forehead.
Mm-hmm. And yes.
So where are you in the cancer journey?
Well, it's gone.
You kicked its ass in a big way.
And it's probably a triathlon cancer because you're out in the sun so much.
Yeah.
I mean, in between those years, I ended up working for the International Federation and ran the World Cup Series around the world, and there were between 12 and 15 events. So, you know, for 2 days, all of those weekends, I would be in sunshine all the time.
I love how you just slipped that World Cup series just into the conversation very nonchalantly, like it was no big deal. How many events in 2 weeks?
In the year.
The year?
12 to 15 World Cups.
Oh.
The only continent I didn't attend a World Cup was in Africa.
Because?
I was supposed to go 1 year and I had some conflict and they didn't have it in the early days, so that was the only reason.
So that brings us to this year and this, coming into the final week of January, and this is a big, big week for triathlon in Edmonton. Frame it up for us.
Well, we're going to launch our 2020 Grande Final, which we've been working on for the last 18 months.
Perspective on what a Grande Final is.
The Grande Final is when we have the elite athletes, the juniors, the U23s, and the age groupers. So a total of 3,500, 4,000 athletes, total of 6,000 visitors in the city for 5 to 7 days. With world championships in all of those categories. The elite athletes will be coming directly from the Tokyo Olympics. In fact, next Monday when we do our launch, we have Tyler Mislawchuk, who's the Canadian athlete who won the test event in Tokyo last year. And Tyler is our international ambassador. So he's here with us. And so we'll have those athletes come straight to Edmonton from Tokyo. The excitement in downtown, Churchill Square will be activated. The registration is inside City Hall. There'll be cultural events and then 5 days of competition in the park, as well as cultural events. We will have beer gardens and music. We will have a Live Active showcase. So Live Active, there's always a sport expo, but Live Active is engaging all of the other sports to come down and set up in the park and get people and families to come and try it, whatever it is you want to try, whether it's basketball or whatever it was. We'll have Ninja Warrior course, but making it an opportunity for families to come to not just watch the elite races, but to participate in all of this.
I love that.
And as well as those world championship events, we'll have a citizens race, sprint distance, which anybody can sign up for.
Awesome.
It's open now. We'll have an open water swim. We'll have a splash and dash for kids. And we'll have something called Triathlon Together, which is the brainchild of Simon Whitfield. We got involved with Simon last year, and his idea is triathlon without the rules. So you can go grab your husband and your kids and say, we're going to do this. So you come down to Horlick Park with your swimsuit and your bike and your running shoes, and you will get in the lake for about 250 meters. You'll ride the bike around the park for 2.5, and you'll run 800 together, and you'll all come through the finish line together. through a world championship
Wow.
finish line.
That is like,
It's very, very cool.
well, it's such an important experience for a family to do something like that together, because
Yeah.
it can really shape you and put you on interesting paths for
Yeah.
each individual member of a family, right?
Yes, and it's just so cool to watch. I actually couldn't quite get my head around it, to be honest with you, until I saw it myself.
What did you see
And I
then?
saw like our general manager and his wife and his 3 kids and his little one he had in the thing behind the bike pulling him, and they all came through the finish line
Oh.
together. And our volunteer coordinator and her son, who wouldn't wait for her because he didn't want to go through the finish line first. But it's so cool that they get to do that.
It's
and
powerful.
this is like a world championship venue. Where else can you actually
Yeah.
do that? And again, I think for the development of the sport and to highlight the fun side of the sport and why you might want to be engaged in this sport, it showcases that.
And not only that, but what do you think it instills in families?
A family that try together, stay together.
You didn't hesitate on that. My goodness. Wow. Yeah, when you look back on all your accomplishments, are there a few memories that you have that really, because is this your last world championship you're doing?
This is the last world championship.
Are you handing over the reins
I'm handing over the reins.
to
yes,
Simon Whitfield?
No, to Stephen Bordeaux,
Oh,
who's
okay.
our general manager. And Stephen worked for me as a summer student back
Really?
in 2003.
I
and now
remember
he's
you
going
mentioning him, yes.
Yes, so yes, handing over the reins.
How does that
certainly
feel?
Being on the steps of the Opera House in Sydney in 2000 when Simon Whitfield won gold. I mean, that was like, Christmas.
Oh.
We were doing 2001, and
Yes.
the athletics are coming to town. We now have an Olympic champ.
Yes, yes. it
Which
is
was so that
Christmas.
was really, really,
Sure.
really cool. And I just think that I was in Athens as a technical official. You kind of pinch yourself, thinking, "How did I get here?"
Mhm.
And it's the international family. It's the ITU family. Like, I've made wonderful friends around the world, everywhere. We actually get together. That year before John died, we went to Ireland with a couple from New Zealand and a couple from Australia and some of our Canadian
Wow.
friends, and
How that volunteer commitment so many years
Mhm.
ago enriched your life in countless ways?
Oh, in countless ways. And my daughter, who did medicine in Calgary, she did a rotation in Wairua in New Zealand and stayed with some of my triathlon friends.
Really?
So it goes past the immediate. It's more than you can ever imagine, actually, being involved in an international sport and being involved in a family like ITU. I mean, sometimes there's dysfunction, but it's the family.
Right. How do you feel about handing over the reins? Is it hard?
No, I'm ready. Well, it's a young person's gig.
Well, I'd say you're pretty darn young.
I think Stephen is going to do a wonderful job. And what's exciting for me is that he's looking to the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
What he can do to do better than I did. So that's when you have people like that. We've got some really good young
Mhm.
people who are focused and want to make a difference and are creative and can go out there and go after things.
Sheila, I know you don't like talking about yourself or shining the light on yourself is how I should put it, but I need you, just for the benefit of all our listeners, what do you think that your strengths are and your gifts are that has allowed you to do this for so many years and turned it into such a success? Because a lot of people might say, well, I can't do that, or I don't know, I don't have those skills set, or I don't think I can accomplish that. What's your message to those people about how you did it and the skill set that helped you along the way?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one is friends. I had an awful lot of friends who got involved and volunteered for what I was doing. But I also think that there's an openness. Like we have an office that has no secrets, and so everybody can feel ownership in being involved. The people who are with you, they need to own it as well, just as much as you do. Because again, it's way too big, and you cannot do it by yourself.
Mhm.
So I think by cultivating that, and by always having fun doing it. Like, we laugh a lot in our office.
Why does that not
Because-
surprise me?
And I just can't imagine, not being able to do that. And through the years, the summer students that we've hired we've had wonderful summer students who've gone on to do something else. And I've also loved that aspect of it, always being able to work with younger people. and being able to have them and watch where they go. And it says Stephen started out here as a student with the World Cup. He ended up being the media manager for ITU and worked internationally for 5 years before having a family and couldn't afford it, not being able to afford a house in Vancouver and you know, coming back to Edmonton. So watching that, you know, the evolution of people like that, and yeah, and I think those young people who experience that, they want to do things like that as well, because they have summer jobs like probably to die for, because it's fun and it's international and everything else. And so it's a combination: the friends, the openness, the engaging the young community.
How would you categorize what this experience has given you?
Well, more than I ever would have expected. I mean, I've traveled the world. I have friends all over the world. My whole family have been involved, and it's been a wonderful experience. And again, not an experience that was planned. So I can't say any more about it other than that. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
When you give your time away, your life is richer for it. Isn't that how the volunteer spirit goes?
Yes, I think so.
Sheila, your gift, this conversation is a gift, and I can only speak like on behalf, and I will, of our city, the gifts you've given our city, how grateful we all are that you've created such a beautiful legacy for triathlon in our city, and the gifts that you've now are opening up to our younger population. But it doesn't stop here. Your impact has been felt and experienced around the world. So thank you for the time that you've given away and what you've created. You've inspired us all on what can be done when you take that initial step forward. Volunteer your time, and to use your words, get on with it. Thank you so much for joining me and for stepping into the inner circle to share your story and your voice today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and having listened to some of your stories, I think the art that you're bringing to storytelling is unique, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm honored to hear that.